For going on 50 years, the McDonnell Douglas, today Boeing, F-15 Eagle, has been America's frontline workhorse among its fighter jet arsenal, and the results have spoken for themselves. Between a 104-0 win-loss rate in direct aerial combat, spots of honor in the air forces of some of America's most important allies, and its exceptional reliability and longevity as a platform, the F-15 and its descendant aircraft have distinguished themselves at every turn. The F-15 of today is an entirely different beast than its outwardly identical, but far more antiquated carbon copy. And right now, as we speak, a new iteration of the F-15 is rolling off the production line for the very first time, poised to become one of the very best weapons of America's wartime arsenal. This is the story of the Boeing F-15EX Eagle II, the successor aircraft meant to take the reins from the F-15 Eagle and push America's Air Force to newer and greater heights. The original F-15 Eagle traces its lineage back to the beginnings of its development program in the mid-1960s, when an American adversary learned the hard way that when potential future battlefield enemies brag about platforms that aren't really all that behind the scenes, the United States tends to respond not by trying to get a look at the thing, but by engineering a bigger, badder platform as their answer. In this case, it was the MiG-25 Foxbat interceptor aircraft out of Russia, boasting extreme high speeds at high altitude and convincing America that it was about to be outclassed. The answer was the first generation F-15. And while the Foxbat turned out to be a bit of a dud, the F-15, it didn't. Boasting maximum speeds at 2.5 times the speed of sound, flying at over twice the altitude of a modern-day commercial airliner, and capable of carrying enough ordnance to make a contemporary Soviet pilot just eject and save himself the dogfight, the Eagle was a crowning achievement for the United States in the half-century-long Cold War. Fast forward another half-century, though, and the problems that led to the Eagle II weren't quite so glamorous. By that time, in the mid-2010s, the United States already had an aerial asset that no global adversary could challenge in the F-22. It was just beginning to introduce a new aircraft into service, the F-35, an aircraft where the Pentagon was still intended to go all in despite myriad problems, delays, and cost overruns. Enemy aircrafts were not the problem. Instead, the problem was the Air Force's long war against the Red Pen, wielded by America's own budget officers looking to tighten the country's belt after the Cold War concluded. America wasn't planning on any intercontinental world wars anytime soon, and as a result to cuts against programs like the F-22, the Air Force was projected to run low on air superiority fighters for a span of years and potentially even decades. Those programs were too expensive to restart once the US realized its misstep, and with the F-35 sucking funds out of any room where a Department of Defense official dared whisper its name, instead they were going to Saudi Arabia and Qatar in the form of two advanced models that built on the abilities of the initial F-15 design and rounded them out in a pretty major way. They were evolutions on the F-15E Strike Eagle, itself an immensely popular variant of the base F-15, and the new improvements were already impressive enough to set them apart. Boeing had the designs, the world had better F-15s, America just hadn't bothered to procure them yet. Not only that, but shifts in thinking around American air superiority strategy led military planners to the conclusion that a new F-15 could have value and longevity all its own. Fifth-generation fighters are, generally speaking, really impressive pieces of hardware, and it's hard to invent a battle that they aren't able to win. But they're not always necessary either. Address threats that say the F-35 is too slow to handle in an interceptor role or doesn't carry enough payload to manage. Ensure that America could select the right tools for a given job, while at the same time offloading some of the nation's air superiority responsibilities onto a more affordable but still advanced alternative. In 2018, after strategic analysis basically greenlit the idea of a combined 4th and 5th generation fighter fleet, the US Air Force began working closely with Boeing to discuss the so-called Advanced F-15 or F-15EX. It would be a two-seat model, they eventually worked out, given that Boeing was, by that time, producing exclusively two-seater aircraft on its current production lines. The program was set to be based in St. Louis, Missouri, where Boeing had a major plant that the US wanted to keep open in order to help spread around America's fighter aircraft construction capabilities. Maiden flight took place in February of 2021, and 2 months later, the aircraft got a name, the Eagle II. Its approvals, its validations, its certifications, and all the other practical stuff it needed, along with a few tweaks, sent back to Boeing for future aircraft. By 2024, just 6 years after the program's conception and 3 years after its maiden flight, the F-15EX was assigned to the 142nd Wing of the Oregon Air National Guard, designated for future call-up into federal service with the US Air Force. The Eagle II is a marked improvement on its progenitor, either holding consistent or offering better performance in just about every conceivable metric. Measuring 63 feet, 9.5 inches from tip to tail, or just under 20 meters long, it features a wingspan of 42 feet, 9.5 inches, or 13 meters. Even sitting empty, it's a substantial piece of engineering at 34,600 pounds, or just hair under 16 metric tons. Fully loaded, that weight will more than double to a maximum takeoff weight of 81,000 pounds, or 36.75 metric tons. It's powered by two General Electric F-110 jet engines and seats 2 crew members, a pilot, and a weapons system officer. Unloaded, and its never-exceed speed is as high as Mach 2.9. It features a combat range of 791 miles or 1,272 kilometers, while with external fuel tanks, it can fly across continents in one go, capping out at 2,400 miles or 3,900 kilometers. It features a service ceiling of 60,000 feet or 18 kilometers, an altitude it can reach in barely more than a minute. There's the question of ordnance, where the F-15EX is packing another level of heat. In addition to 12 external hardpoints, the Eagle II is capable of mounting bomb racks that increase its carrier capacity to an unbelievable 22 air-to-air missiles, 23 bombs, or a combination depending on the racks used for the job, including the AIM-260, a missile currently under development by Lockheed Martin and treated as the Air Force and the Navy's highest priority weapon procurement. It should arrive sometime in 2024. It carries several kinds of air-to-surface and anti-radiation missiles, including the AGM-183 Arrow, a 6,600 pounds or 3 metric ton hypersonic missile currently on ice as the US decides whether or not it would like to fund the thing in future years. It carries not just small diameter bombs, but the heavy bunker-busting Mark 84, outfitted with guiding equipment called the JDAM. It integrates modern, multimodal, all-weather radar, multiple options for an advanced targeting pod that features autonomous target tracking and identification, and a specially designed electronic warfare and countermeasure suite meant to keep it available in the heat of battle. Finally, it rounds out its onboard arsenal with an onboard Gatling cannon with 500 rounds of 20mm ammunition. And it brings 2 extra wing pylons to the table after previous fly-by-wire systems caused it stability issues that required those pylons to go unused. Eagle II's refined wing structure extends its service life dramatically to 20,000 flight hours, enough to nearly triple the projected service lives of most global air superiority fighters, and projecting its usefulness outward to the next 80 years, potentially not retiring until the year 2100 or later.
Mirroring the prowess of its namesake, the Eagle, the F-15 reigns as a supreme force in the skies. Its entry into the battlefield signals a dominating presence, matched by a lethal strike capability. This formidable aerial predator, renowned for its unmatched proficiency, is poised to succeed the legendary F-22. Since its inaugural flight, the F-15 has been a relentless terror to adversaries. With its recent upgrades, this aircraft has evolved into an even more formidable and fearsome combatant. The F-15EX boasts a striking range that surpasses any other fighter in the US Air Force's arsenal. This advanced aircraft stands out with its exceptional ability to carry 12 AMRAAMs or other substantial ordnance, setting a new benchmark in aerial combat capabilities. Born in the 1970s, this fourth-generation fighter is still soaring the skies and winning battles in a world dominated by fifth-generation aircraft. This aircraft was designed with the fundamental principles of lightweight and tons of power in mind, so it can outperform anything the enemy throws at it. During the F-15's almost 50 years of service, it was challenged by many formidable fighters. It killed them all. There's never been an incident of an F-15 being shot down, and it has so far claimed some 100 kills. The basic F-15 was designed with a single-seat inceptor. The cockpit was raised and a new, fairly wide one-piece windscreen was installed. The aircraft was also outfitted with the most up-to-date onboard controls for systems, communications, and weapons. Raytheon's game-changing all-weather multi-mode AN/APG-63 radar was also installed on the F-15. This pulse Doppler radar was one of the first fire control radars that could look up at high-flying targets and down at low-flying targets without being confused by ground clutter. It can detect and track aircraft and small high-speed targets at distances beyond visual range, down to close range, and at altitudes down to treetop level. The F-15's twin engines, Pratt & Whitney F-100PW220s or 229s, have a very high thrust-to-weight ratio and can generate almost 8 times their own weight in thrust. When you add the plane's relatively light body, which is mostly metal other than the 26 to 27% titanium with about 5 to 7% composites, and low wing load to its powerful engines, you get a fighter that is really fast and agile. While it can cruise at speeds of Mach 0.9, at full force an F-15 can get up to Mach 2.5. In 1975, it established a world record by going from a standstill on the ground to an altitude of nearly 100,000 feet in under 3.5 minutes. The Eagles can be armed with combinations of different air-to-air weapons. AIM-120 advanced minimum-range air-to-air missiles on its lower fuselage corners, AIM-9LM Sidewinder or AIM-120 missiles on 2 pylons under the wings, and an internal 20mm Gatling gun on the right-wing root, as well as the Boeing-built Small-Diameter Bomb 1 Joint Direct Attack Munition or JDAM and laser JDAM weapons. The F-15 has been produced in single-seat A models and 2-seat B versions. The single-seat F-15C and 2-seat F-15D models entered the Air Force inventory beginning in 1979. To meet the U.S. Air Force requirement for air-to-ground missions, the F-15E Strike Eagle was developed. The F-15E is a 2-seat dual-role totally integrated fighter for all-weather, air-to-air, and deep interdiction missions. For low-altitude, high-speed penetration and precision attack on tactical targets at night or in adverse weather, the F-15E carries a high-resolution APG-70 radar and low-altitude navigation and targeting infrared for night pods. F-15C, D, and E models were deployed to the Persian Gulf in 1991 in support of Operation Desert Storm, where they proved their superior combat capability. F-15C fighters accounted for 34 of the 37 USAF air-to-air victories. F-15Es were operated mainly at night, hunting Scud missile launchers and artillery sites, using the Lantern system. Despite doubts about its future effectiveness against modern air defenses, the F-15EX boasts significant upgrades. These include the Amber missile system for increased firepower, a new infrared search and track system, advanced avionics and electronic warfare equipment, and a powerful AESA radar. While its long-term viability remains uncertain, the F-15EX currently excels in critical roles like homeland defense, airbase protection, enforcing no-fly zones against weaker adversaries, and deploying standoff weapons.